Even though we here at The Ugly Truth have always been optimistic, even though we are not the pawns and puppets and mouthpieces of anybody, certainly not, but we do trust the leadership of those forces on the front line against the U.S.-Israeli empire. We are supporters of Iran. We are supporters of Syria. We are unequivocal supporters of Hezbollah. We are supporters of Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, and the other Bolivarian-aligned states in Latin America. We're supporters, of course, of Russia. We're supporters of any resistance movement, group, or state throughout the world who defies international Zionism. But the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, is that Yanukovych, despite all of his flaws, despite all of the mistakes that he has made, despite the fact that he has found himself aligned with some rather dirty forces in the past in terms of Ukrainian organized crime, and not Jewish Ukrainian organized crime either, but just regular run-of-the-mill gangsters Yanukovych found himself in bed with, proverbially speaking, of course. And he should indeed be questioned for these in the future. But right now, right this minute, Yanukovych is now a major player in the struggle against organized Jewish interests. Because if this man goes down and the government is taken over by the likes of the white supremacists of Svoboda, its allies, and along with liberals like Klitschko and others, these people will take over the country. They will sell the Ukraine down the river. They will cancel ties with Russia. They will downgrade ties with China. They will certainly eliminate ties with Iran, and they will put themselves firmly in the camp of the empire. Now, what is so stunning about all of this? While you see the people of Svoboda and its leadership blasting Jews here, blasting Jews there, these people are in bed with Israel. These people have praised Israel. These people have met officials from the usurping Zionist entity. So it's amazing that these people are bashing Jews left and right, but they find themselves in the same camp as the Israeli regime and its agents within the United States, chiefly John McCain and John Kerry. If these people were truly nationalistic, what in the name of Almighty God would they be doing meeting with someone like John McCain or someone like John Kerry? Two of the vilest Zionists that have walked the planet in quite some time and who have done more to erode the sovereignty of nation states than just about anybody else in Congress, excluding maybe someone like Dianne Feinstein, who is clearly the devil incarnate. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, there needs to be a distinction drawn. And it seems that many persons within our movement are not doing that. Because of the fact that the media is controlled by Zionist Jews from top to bottom, alternative media and mainstream media, domestic media and foreign media. And there are only a handful of untouched media sources in the world. And even though they're not right all of the time, they are independent. I'm speaking about Press TV, Al-Alam, and Fars News of Iran. I'm speaking about RT and Voice of Russia, as well as Pravda in Russia. I'm speaking about Venezuela Analysis, who does coverage for Venezuela mostly in Latin America secondarily. I'm speaking about Al-Manar, the channel of Hezbollah. I'm talking about Sana'a of Syria. And if you are an Arabic speaker, there is also Al-Mayadeen. And then, of course, you have Al-Akhbar of Lebanon, who does not have any state funding, is entirely independent, and as I have said on numerous occasions on this program, is the best paper on the face of the earth. So there are very few sources that we can look to for untouched, unfiltered criticism of organized Jewish interests. And because of this, the moment that we hear anybody criticizing Jewry, automatically we are made to think, oh, these people must be on our side, without thinking twice or looking into the history of the organization. And again, this is why I urge all of you to read Brother Michael Collins Piper's book, because of the fact that these organizations are most likely to be infiltrated. Now, we have to examine the comments that have been made by Svoboda that the Ukraine is controlled by a Moscow Jewish mafia. This is insulting, ladies and gentlemen. It is an intellectually inferior premise. There is no person on the face of this earth, excluding Sayyid Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, and Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them both. There is no person on the face of this globe, apart from Hezbollah and Iran, that has done more to combat organized Jewish interests than Vladimir Putin. This is a man who took the Jewish oligarchs to war. He took nearly $100 billion from these people, locked up 8 of them. The rest of them left the country, winding up in the usurping Jewish entity as well as the UK. After he took the Jewish oligarchs to war and he began dismembering the neoliberal politics and policies that they helped put in place in Russia, he was then attacked in Chechnya with a Saudi-Israeli plot that looked to undermine his authority and turn Russia into what Syria is today, a haven for terrorists. He prevailed over it. Then there was the 2008 war with Georgia and South Ossetia. And what they hoped to do was balkanize, to break off a part of Russia which could be used to further penetrate inside the country. The Georgian regime was armed to the teeth with Israelis. There were even Israeli commandos fighting with the Georgian army. The Georgian leadership, many of whom were dual citizen Israeli Jews. Vladimir Putin ordered the army to teach them a lesson, and that's exactly what they did. Putin, by defeating the Israeli-aligned Georgian army, prevented World War III. From the domestic standpoint, Vladimir Putin has helped Christianity come back to life in Russia. He has also derailed all attempts by organized Jewish interests to inject homosexuality into Russia's culture. So Vladimir Putin has been on a roll. And then came the Arab Spring, and Putin had a choice. Strategically, he would either roll with the empire's punches and keep Russia out of it, or he would confront them. Once he realized that the war on Syria and the rest of the resistance axis, for that matter, was in fact a war on Russia, Vladimir Putin doubled down in his support for Syria, he doubled down in his support for Iran, and he opened up the closest channels that Russia has ever had with Hezbollah in years. So, ladies and gentlemen, the point of the matter is that Vladimir Putin has defended Syria and defended Iran, Israel's 2 greatest enemies at the state level. They've opened up ties with Hezbollah, the usurping Jewish entity's greatest adversary on any level, state or guerrilla actor. Russia has defended Christianity. Vladimir Putin announced nearly a decade ago that Russia is the shielder of Islam. It has resisted the Jewish homosexuality agenda. It has crushed the usage of drugs, which have been organized by the Jewish mafia-aligned, KSA-aligned thugs in Kosovo, in which many of the drugs are coming, the KLA, as in the Kosovo Liberation Army. So there is not a single element that Vladimir Putin has not confronted, and yet there are still people that think he is the pawn of Jewish interests. There's just nothing to back this up, ladies and gentlemen. And moreover, and what has been one of the biggest blows to Jewish interests in years, but it was not talked about by anybody, including from our side, Vladimir Putin blew the whistle that at least 85% of the original Bolshevik leadership was Jewish, and he slammed the Bolshevik leadership for all of the crimes that they committed and the mistakes that they made. Now, there has not been a single world leader, ladies and gentlemen, at least not that I can remember. And Brother Mark Glenn, if he'd like to chime in, he certainly can. Or if any of you would like to chime in, you certainly can. Just give us a ring at 347-838-8321. Again, that's 347-838-8321. If I am mistaken. If I am not mistaken, please hold your calls, ladies and gentlemen. I have not taken calls on this program for quite some time, and it's not a slight to any of you. It's that I would prefer to give my lesson and allow everybody to take it all in and join me the following week. But anyway, if I am wrong, please do correct me. But I don't believe that I am. I do not believe that there's been a single world leader to call out the Jewish origins of the terroristic, bloodthirsty Bolshevik regime. But Vladimir Putin did. Now, if this was a man who was on the side of organized Jewish interests, why would he be doing all of this to the detriment of not only his own country, but himself? Again, go to your favorite internet search engine and take a look. There have been numerous assassination attempts on Putin's life. And the bombings that we have recently seen in Volgograd and the threats that have been coming from Israeli intelligence as well as the Takfiri terror gangs run by Prince Bandar ibn Israel. These are very real threats, and they're done to undermine Russia's authority. So this is the issue at hand, ladies and gentlemen. Vladimir Putin is anti-Zionist and anti-organized Jewish interests. And I know there are many persons who would point to, well, why does Russia have a relationship with Israel then? And the very simple answer to that is this. Russia as a world power needs a channel to get to the United States. Vladimir Putin is aware that Netanyahu and the Israeli regime represent that channel. And due to the relationship of closeness, especially of ideological closeness between Russia, Iran, and Syria, Vladimir Putin would rather keep his enemies close than keep them far away. And whatever is said behind closed doors between Putin and Netanyahu, there is no doubt, based on Vladimir Putin's actions and the way that he played a major role alongside Iran and Hezbollah in derailing the war on Syria, that whatever is said will get back to his allies in Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah. So, unlike, say, China, whose relationship with the Israeli regime is very dangerous, and that China has allowed many Israeli firms, especially security firms, operate on their soil, Russia does not have that problem. So when you hear the thugs of Severboda, who themselves are allied with the usurping Israeli regime, who themselves are allied with Jewish-financed imperialism, accusing the other side of being representatives of the international Jewish power matrix, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the way the monsters want it. This is the kiss of death. You want to derail someone's actions. You want to smear a person's name. You want to humiliate a person, disconnect that person from his people or from his allies, accuse him of being on the side of the enemy. They did it with Yasser Arafat before Arafat turned into the scoundrel that he turned into. They did it with Muammar Gaddafi, and for all of the things that Muammar Gaddafi did wrong, for all of his sins, chiefly being his horrible, insidious, and downright unforgivable role in the disappearance of Sayyid Musa al-Sadr. Despite all of these things, Gaddafi was not Jewish, and he did a multitude of things to fight imperialism and fight Zionism on the African continent. Gaddafi was accused of being Jewish. They accused Mahmoud Ahmadinejad of being Jewish. They've accused Hamas and Hezbollah of being creations of the usurping Jewish entity. the likes of the likes of the scumbag Alex Jones have accused the DPRK and Hugo Chavez of being American plants. So this is a common tactic, brothers and sisters, of organized Jewish interests to say that their enemies are actually their creations. So they will disconnect them from their populations and therefore erode their popular support. But it simply is not true. And in fact, it is the exact opposite. And this is something that we also need to discuss. There is the matter of projection, specifically Jewish projection. But in this case, we should use the phrase sub-imperialist projection, because we see states like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Turkey, which are operating as sub-imperialists. They have been subcontracted by the imperialist states to do the Zionist dirty agenda in Syria. Well, the same thing goes, ladies and gentlemen, for these people in the Ukraine. There is no doubt that international Zionism has big plans for these persons. And what they want to do is they want to now subcontract what is happening in the Ukraine to other states in the Balkans if they step out of line, as well as any other state in Europe that may step out of line. And this is why we need to continue to follow the situation with Brother Dieudonné, because there is a French resistance rising, ladies and gentlemen, and I am not talking about the anti-German, Allied-aligned French resistance of World War II that you constantly hear glorification about. I am talking about a real French resistance, an anti-Zionist, anti-Jewish, anti-plutocratic resistance that is rising up because they are sick of the way they have been living for nearly 50 years now. And the thuggery of these white supremacist thugs in the Ukraine, this will be exported, ladies and gentlemen. Mark my words, it will be exported if it is not gotten under control. And the issue here is projection, sub-imperialist projection. When you have a sub-imperialist state or a sub-imperialist group accusing an anti-imperialist group or an anti-Zionist state of being an agent of imperialism or Zionism, they are projecting their own identity on their target. If Turkey or Qatar or Saudi Arabia or any of these other reactionary regimes in the region, if they accuse Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, Russia, etc., of being on the payroll of the side of the Americans, it doesn't mean we need to look into it, ladies and gentlemen. We have to look at the actions of the states being accused and say, okay, they're saying that for one reason and one reason only, because it's a reflection of their own identity and they want to misdirect people from looking into their own record. The record of Turkey is an abysmal one. The record of Saudi Arabia, the worst. The record of Qatar, horrific. And now these thugs in the Ukraine have the audacity, ladies and gentlemen, to accuse Vladimir Putin of being a tool of the Moscow Jewish mafia, that their country is a tool of the Moscow Jewish mafia, while they themselves are meeting with the agents of the international Jewish mafia.